Hey guys, Dr. Simples here, and welcome to my review of Series A, Episode 3, Robot of Sherwood. Now, before I start, I would just like to say, this finally arrived in the post yesterday. As I'm sure you all know, it's the 50th Anniversary Collector's Edition Blu-ray set. I ordered this back in July, so it's taken fair time to get here, but it was definitely worth the wait. It's got absolutely pretty much everything that was shown on TV over the 50th, including an Adventure in Space and Time on Blu-ray for the first time, and now I also have The Time of the Doctor. So yeah, it's great, and it's a lovely set. I've got number 5444. It's a brilliant set, and if it's still on sale, I don't know if it is, but if it's still around, 100% recommend it, and I shall be doing a review of this sometime soon. But for now, this is going up on the shelf, and I will get on with the review of Robot of Sherwood. So, where do we begin? First impressions of this episode. I liked it. I liked it a lot. It was a really fun episode. At times I thought it was a bit cringy, but overall I thought it was great. It was a great filler between Into the Dalek, which was quite dramatic and slightly dark, and then we have this fun episode, Robot Sherwood, and then next week we have Listen, which is really dark and scary, apparently. So it was slotted in there nicely. So though I thought it was a bit cringy, I really enjoyed it. It was a really fun episode. The first thing I'd like to point out is how cool would it have been if they used the cast from the BBC Robin Hood TV show a few years ago. That would have been awesome. But obviously it would have been impossible to get all the cast members together to do one episode of Doctor Who, and it would be everyone would remember it as a crossover rather than a Doctor Who episode, so probably it would actually be a bad idea. The first thing I'd like to point out from this episode is the Doctor's spoon. With this spoon, I saw I saw more Doctors shining through Peter Capaldi's Doctor. I saw a bit of Peter Davison as he was putting it back into his jacket as he was walking down the stairs, and I saw a load of Matt Smith as he was a bit crazy and eccentric. The spoon was pretty cool. Also, we had the next thing I think that's important, is the arrow in the TARDIS as he pulled it out, the hole healed up, which obviously emphasises how the TARDIS is a living thing. So that was a nice touch to the episode. As I keep going on, we know this Doctor's a lot more alien than he has been before, and he's very sceptical of the people he meets. For a start, he's convinced Robin Hood doesn't exist, and he also threatens to punch him in the face, which is not something Matt Smith's Doctor would have done. It was a fairly funny episode towards the start, as we had the Doctor taking one of Robin Hood's men's blood, saying he only has 6 months to live, and saying if you were real, you would have 6 months to live. He's like, I am real, and then he says the sheriff's going to rule over us forever. So he's like, 6 months in your case. It was really quite funny. And also he makes a point of how it's never sunny in Nottingham. We also learnt that the Doctor is against bantering. Guys, we can't banter anymore. Sorry. It was rather funny, again, when the Doctor says, when they're having the archery tournament, and the Doctor's like, oh, this is getting silly, and blows up the target. Well, this is also another showing of Capaldi's impatience and how sceptical he is again of how this is all made up. We also had some martial arts references. Clara does taekwondo, and Capaldi karate chops Robin's sword out of his hand, which is sort of referencing, in a way, the Third Doctor with all his karate stuff. Also, Clara got angry again when the Doctor and Robin are arguing and shouting at the guard, telling the guard to execute each other, and Clara just yells, shut up. So it's great to see Clara getting angry again, because she is quite a passive character overall. Also, when they're arguing, the Doctor says he has a genetic advantage that would allow him to die slower, which is probably a nice reference to regeneration, seeing as he can live, well, his last cycle lasted 2,000 years, but it might also just be referencing the fact that his body would age a lot slower. The whole argument in the dungeon was childish, and for example, when after this regeneration aging reference, he says to Clara, all excited, he'd be like, it would be me though, wouldn't it? So it's basically a lot of Matt Smith's Doctor, parallel to Matt Smith's Doctor's childness, and Matt Smith was really shining through in this episode, which I thought was good, seeing as he is the 12th Doctor's immediate predecessor. Clara, again in this dungeon scene, calls the Doctor the last of the Time Lords, which we now know he's not, or is he? Because we know for a fact Gallifrey was saved, but it's still in his pocket universe. So it was interesting that Clara still chose to call the Doctor the last of the Time Lords, even though they both know the Time Lords are still out there somewhere, just not in this universe. Okay, the moment where they dropped the keys, that just irritated me. It was so stupid, it made it painful to watch. It was just... that is not what the Doctor is like. So Peter Capaldi seems to have this side to him that he can get overwhelmed with trying to prove himself right, or win over people, or just get involved in childish things. So, and that would like mess up the whole situation. So I did not like the keys moment, purely because it just annoyed me. And then the next thing I noticed was they found a blacksmith's forge very quickly without getting detected while carrying around the weight and their chains. Bit of a like unbelievable thing there that they got the chains cut off so quickly with no one finding them. And then they went into the spaceship, and of course we had the Promised Lands. So that's part of the story arc of Series 8. And the planet is probably orange, judging by the background that said the ship's destination. Personally, I think the Promised Lands is Gallifrey, purely because I believe it's connected to Missy. So, and we know Missy's sort of like looking after a sort of heaven. And when we saw pictures of Series 8 filming from the finale, we saw a tombstone saying "Rest in peace, we promise," which relates to heaven and like coming back. So all these characters, when Missy could come back, rest in peace, we promise. And the tombstone also had Gallifreyan writing on it. So to me it hints that the Promised Lands is Gallifrey. Also, Gallifrey is orange, and we know it's coming back sooner or later. And there was no Missy in this episode, which is good. We don't want to overdo her, but we want her to... I like how she pops up at the most unexpected times. It's a bit like the Crack in Series 5, where it would just like pop up ever so often. But with the Crack it was obviously... sometimes it's hard to notice, or it was focused on, or it was right at the end of the episode. And I like where they're going with Missy, that she'll suddenly pop up in the middle of the action, and then just be brushed aside. So it's going well. But there was no Missy in this episode, which is good. Don't want to shove the story arc in our faces. We also, when they were in the spaceship, saw a picture of Patrick Troughton as Robin Hood, because he was the first actor to play Robin Hood on TV. And obviously, in case you didn't know, Patrick Troughton played the Second Doctor in the 60s, but I would hope you knew that. Then we had the defeat of the robots with the rebellion of the castle workers with plates, which sort of was a throwback to the plate the Doctor used to show the half-faced man his face, and then the reflection and all that. Guess it's got nothing to do with it, but it's kind of cool that they use the same sort of plates. The Doctor refers to the Sheriff as having, as being a pudding-headed primitive, which is a direct reference to his first episode, Deep Breath, where he says everyone has pudding brains. Every human has pudding brains. So that is how the 12th Doctor thinks of humans. Yay! When Robin and the Sheriff are having a sword fight, the Sheriff says something like, "Never aging, never tiring," and he says it in the same sort of tone that the Master, I believe, said it in End of Time. He said something like, "Never dying, never something," I can't, as he was being resurrected. So, probably far-fetched, but that stood out to me immediately. That the Sheriff had these connections to, dialogue connections to what the Master said in the End of Time. And then Robin defeated the Sheriff with the Doctor's trick of going like that as he goes to jab and then push him off, which is really cool. It's direct thing from the beginning of the episode. So that was a really cool way of defeating the Sheriff. And then obviously the Sheriff was encased in gold and all. And in my opinion, he probably went to Missy. We don't know it yet, but I think he'll turn up again. Then they save the day by firing a golden arrow at the ship, which flies out in the atmosphere and explodes. Personally, I find this stupid and far-fetched, but it was cool. The fact that the engines were where the gold was stored, and suddenly an arrow attaching to the side of the ship will make it work. And the solid gold arrow is going to be pretty heavy, and somehow Robin managed to fire it maybe 100 feet in the air. I know he's Robin Hood, but no one can fire a solid gold arrow 100 feet in the air. Personally, I also think Robin Hood will be back. Maybe not in the finale, maybe some other time. I think he might become a friend of the Doctor's, a bit like Churchill was to Matt Smith. And then Robin said to the Doctor, a bit like how Rusty said at the end of the last episode, "You are a good Dalek," or something. And he gave us a moment to think. Robin said, "I'm just as real as you are." Now, I have heard that this Doctor is being controlled in the 12th Doctor, and that will become apparent later on, or something like that. But I think that "I'm just as real as you are" is going to be important. Maybe something's going on here. And I kind of twigged this, but turns out at the end, the girl throughout the story was Marion, Robin's lover. So that is really it. That's all I could find for the Robots of Sherwood. And overall, as I say, it was a good episode. Really fun for a change. And it was quite clever in places. Next week, listen, we have Turn of Red Spacesuits, or Orange, whatever. Danny Pink, and it's scary and written by Stephen Moffat, and apparently it's really good. It's one of his good episodes he does occasionally, where he does a really solid, creepy episode. So that's it, everybody. Thank you for watching. Next Sunday, I will be back with a review of Listen. I said Deep Breath. But yes, I'll be back with a review of Listen, and sooner or later I will be reviewing the 50th Anniversary Collector's Edition Blu-ray set. Thank you for watching, and see you next Sunday, guys. Bye.